For me, I just thought it was really nice to be able to think about someone. I mean, especially with the year that we've all had, of someone that you're closer to now. It's definitely a way to be able to look at something that is really it's something positive that has happened throughout the entire year with all the negativity and all of the hardship that so many have faced. So that was something just in general off the top of my head that I was thinking about. Also, hi, I'm Courtney.
I said, hi, Courtney. What department do you work in too? Let's add that.
I work in human resources in EDE, which is employee development and engagement.
Awesome. Thank you. And thank you for your comments. Anyone else? Reactions? Thoughts?
To kind of pick up on Courtney's example, and true, it's been a tough year. I think also what makes it tough to think about someone is the fact that we're separate. For those of us working remote, you know, if this was a normal, what we consider a normal year, we'd be working together, more interactive. And so it made me dig a little harder because of the normal time we spend with our teams was disrupted this past year. So, but you know, still you can still work as a team remotely, but it was a little difficult thinking of someone considering this past year we had.
Yeah, yeah. And also, I think what's nice about this activity is that it's like a muscle, and it'll be hard if we're not used to doing this type of reflection. And then the more you do it, and the more if you're doing this on a regular basis, especially if you're leaning into your talents of relationship building, then I think it'll get a little bit easier each time as well. Anything else before we move? Okay. Let's see here. Trying to make sure you could see the screen, the full screen. I think this should do it, but I'm not sure. So I want to do a quick review of, I'll try this one. I want to do a quick review of the definition of our terms. Okay, so when we talk about talents, and I answer for the top 5, like talent themes is what how Gallup refers to them. I'm talking about the natural reoccurring, and I think about it in 3s: your thoughts, your feelings, and your behaviors. So how am I thinking about something? How am I feeling about it? How am I acting on it? So your response or interaction with something is really based on those kind of 3 areas. And then when I say this last piece, that can be productively applied, that is what your talent is. Okay, then what is a weakness? And so weakness is a shortage or a misapplication of a talent, a skill, or knowledge that then causes problems for you or for others. And if you remember the talent or the strengths equation that we often use, we say talent multiplied by by skills, knowledge, investment. If you multiply that development by your talent, then you get a strength. Is that sounding familiar? Or are you all remembering when we talked about that? And so now here, when we talk about weakness, it's really this of like a shortage or misapplication of either that talent or a skill that you have, something you're competent in, or your knowledge that specifically that causes problems for you or for someone else. And that's kind of how we're defining it. So when we talk about relationship building domain, how the reason why I so there's 4 domains. We know that there's 4 domains. And can anyone tell me what the other 3 domains are real quick? So we know there's relationship building. Do you all remember what the other 3 are? Like quick pop quiz.
Strategic thinking, influencing,
Yes.
and executing.
Perfect. Wonderful. And so I want to take a few moments to just like break that down for a minute. The reason why those domains were created, and it came from in 2009 when strengths-based leadership came out. So it wasn't there the whole time. They really crafted that to understand teams. So when you're developing yourself as an individual, know that you have all 4 domains. When it tells you this is your like top domain, that's really saying this is where you naturally go to first. It's not saying that you don't have or that you lack the other domains. So I want to make that clear. The reason why we talk about domains is to help teams and organizations and groups understand like if people have certain types of talents that we generally can expect these types of things from those talents. But that doesn't mean that's the only thing that they do. It's not meant to be a label. It's not meant to be limiting, it just for groups and organizations to begin to understand one another and how to use our talents best. We did these groupings. Now, as a group or as an individual, as if you need to go to something that's within a different domain, it's like a low wall. There's separation, but it's not you're gonna have to step over the wall. It's gonna take some like a little more effort and energy because it's not where you naturally go, but you can do it. It is accessible to you for you to take what your talents are and then apply it in another domain that you might want to go to. So I want to be clear about that. The other thing that how I like to think about and conceptualize these domains, and I think it's helpful for me, hopefully maybe it's helpful for you, is I think about it in this order based on how a team might go from a concept to an end product. And so I think about what's the first thing that tends to happen is strategic thinking. Strategic thinking figures out what the problem is. They think about it, if they're using data or they're whatever it is, they identify what potentially they identify what the problem is. Next step, influencing. Influencing figures out how to talk about it and how to bring in partners who are going to be able to work on it. Right? They're going to go out, they're going to like say, this is what we're doing, this is what we plan to do, this is what we hope to do, this is what we're visioning, come on board. The next group is relationship building, because now we have a whole bunch of people in a team. Relationship building talents are the glue that keeps the team together and productive. It's those, and so it's the team that helps people understand how they're greater as a sum and not individual parts. So it's the interconnectedness and figuring out how it's the people putting people together. It's the, all of those things that understand the team members and how to do the work. And then executing is the how do I get it done? How do I chop up the assignments? How do I get it executed and out? And so now, like knowing where it is within a team helps you kind of know how to like show up. So we're going to dive into relationship building a little bit more today, but hopefully that was helpful. It helps me understand it or begin to think about it and how to, when you're looking at your group grid. So everyone should have access to their team grid for their department. And if you don't, let me know. And as you begin to look at that, thinking about what are the top talents within a domain of my particular group, and how do I begin to use it? So these are the domains that we're thinking about within relationship building. And so we're going to go through now each one of these and talk through what they bring to the table and how they might trip us up. I'm going to go through information from a number of different documents. And then after I do that kind of preview, then I'm going to open up for you all to, share some of your experiences with that. Okay. So I want to first set the tone also. So this first one's adaptability. If you want to also follow with the strengths, the pocket strengths guide or the quick reference sheet, that's also a good, help to like capture that really quickly. But here are some of the staff members who have it from our teams, who have adaptability specifically. And then here are some of the shadow sides. Okay, so I'm going to go through these a little bit. If I can get that part of my screen to show up for me. There we go. Okay. And I was like, where did it go? Okay, there we go. So basement of adaptability. So oftentimes what happens with adaptability is people assume that adaptability is only about going with the flow. So who in this like space has adaptability, if anyone? Like kind of raise hand or highlight. No? Okay. So people often assume, oh, this is like the go with the flow person, so they don't need much structure. So they, they're whimsical or sheepish or directionless, but rather the balcony of this theme is that they're able to, they like structure and they provide structure. It's just that when things change, they can easily adapt and adjust and recalibrate easier than some other folks. So the balcony or the benefit of that is that they're able to be flexible and they're comfortable in times of change. The stressors for them is if they feel stuck, if they're the rigid procedures where there's inflexibility, that's going to cause some dissonance. And so then the relief of that is having some wiggle room. Not that they'd want no structure, they need and want structure, but if they can have the ability to innovate and have the ability to, for someone to like value, they really value consistency. It just, if they feel confined and that they can't do the things like make the changes or make the suggestions, then that's going to kind of trigger. Some downfalls is because people equate flow and flexibility with irresponsibility. And so this is recognizing that some of these downfalls or these potential trip ups have nothing to do with the person itself, but more about how it's perceived by others. And I think that's one of the big things that has helped me out with strengths is now that I'm aware of what I'm bringing, I'm also aware of how I might be perceived. And then I can manage, how I bring myself to the table or manage people's like expectations by intentionally explaining why I do something or what I'm doing or my intention behind that. And then I leave it up to them to then go from there. And so that's a nice piece that the strengths language provides. The genius of adaptability is now people who take things as they come and they discover the future one day at a time. So adaptability is being present, responsive in the moment. I kind of put adaptability on a trio with context, thinking about the history, adaptability, thinking about the present moment, and futuristic, thinking about what is yet to come. I just thought of the like ghost of Christmas past, present, and future. But yeah, so adaptability is in the moment, right? So the shadow sides, lack of vision, either not necessarily saying that this is what is happening, but maybe how people are perceiving. No plans. People are thinking, oh, you go with the flow already. So then like you don't have that structure. Lack of appreciation for structure, tardiness, hey, because you go with the flow, easily distracted, like you might not be able to stick to that rigid timeline because you need that flexibility. Or procrastination, because you might, be distracted by something else that came up that changed, then there may be this procrastination, either reality or perception. So some of the things that makes them beneficial, though, for the same very thing maybe, but like in a different context, is that they can lead in the moment. The moment arrives, something changes, they can take the lead. They can guide the team through those challenges and change times. And then they provide stability through flexibility. So those are some of the things about adaptability. Oops. So now your turn. What are how have you experienced it or experienced others who share that, or just general thoughts that you felt?
This is not one of my top 5 strengths,
Mm-hmm.
but in my personal life, I really relate to a lot of these. So I feel like in a different context, I could definitely have adaptability as somewhere in my top 10.
Yeah. And recognizing too that like, yes, it could be in your top 10. You're absolutely right on there. And also there's crossover of some of the things that either maybe the output of this or maybe the shadow sides of this with other relationship building talents. It just may be that this doesn't come, like you said, like it's not my most natural thing, but it doesn't mean that we might not have it. Absolutely. Other thoughts? No? Okay, that's fine. All right, so next one is connectedness. Anyone in this space have connectedness? Let's take a look at who. So this is who on our teams has this strength and talent of connectedness. Okay, so here it is. Connectedness can be seen as passive, naive, too idealistic, or wishy-washy. How I think about connectedness is being able to, well, one, I think about it as the force. And so recognizing that all things are connected. So all actions that happen in one place has a ripple effect or a domino effect to something else. So that's kind of like someone being attuned to that impact that happens from one thing to another, and not just having the dots, but being able to see that connection. And so this person, the gift that they're giving us is can sometimes be seen as spiritual. And this idea of not sweating the small stuff, or they're having strong faith that like it's going to work out, or it's going to be okay. They're always looking at the bigger picture. They're kind of seeing the bigger view of things, of like, oh, this thing happened, and then this is how, like on a macro scale, how it's helping or may cause harm. And they're going to help other people see purpose, either their purpose or the purpose of that given activity. They're going to feel some downfalls. Is going to be that they're discouraged and distressed when the world seems fractured. And so they're going to be the bridge builder. They're going to provide hope. They're going to be able to sustain, they are themselves sustained by the thought of a power beyond physical, and a belief in that there's a connection to all things. That fills them up, so then they're able to like bring that thought and that hope and that attitude to the group. Their shadow sides might be persisting beyond, like somebody's wishes. Someone's like, hey, don't do that. And they're like, oh, like I believe that this is, I'm going to have persistence because I believe in this and what I'm doing. And so that could potentially be a shadow side if you keep pushing. And I think a lot of times when we think about weaknesses, it's not what the action is, it's that it is overused or overdone. And so when you do something too much, then that's where it begins to have like a potential negative impact. And then you have to learn how to manage it. They may be thought of aloof in their thinking or slow to make decisions because they're thinking about the impact that it has everywhere else, right? So how they're leading, they lead with the ability to see that connection in all things. They're helping team members to identify the connections with tasks. And they're going to get triggered if there's no room for the mystery or an inability to explain the connections, or if you're sticking to one subject and not allowing them to make those connections and those patterns. Some relief from that is to respect the space for mystery and for the unknown, and allow that to have a place. Allowing them to explain the connections that they see, and being able to have interdisciplinary associations with things. That's going to provide them some relief when they're stressed. So I'm going to pause that there. Thoughts, experiences with this, or people that you've observed that have had connection or connectedness rather. And welcome Joe and Jasco. No thoughts and reactions for connectedness? Nobody's been working with connectedness people? Huh. Oh, got some stuff in the chat. Let's see. What are we saying? Oh, thank you. You're welcome. You're welcome, Jasco.
Dr. Sobers, this isn't just, it's Jasco. This is maybe not just related to connectedness. Sorry, I jumped on later. So you may have already defined this, but when you're using the word triggers for stress triggers for this and then any of the others, what is kind of your working definition for trigger when it talks about this? Like what is, and it probably looks different across the strengths, but what's kind of going on as a stress trigger? What does that mean?
Yeah, that's a good question. And this, I took that from a strengths coach called Chris, I think it's something with an H. I don't want to say it wrong, but I can send you the link to his website. And Inez, maybe I'll send it. But yeah, so I took it from his website and his work. So how I'm understanding it is these are the actions or activities that are going to cause dissonance, and are going to cause you to, I think maybe cause that particular strength to not work at their typical best. Those are the spaces, like if you were filling out the worksheet of the best of us and it says, what environments do I not want? Or, what actions would not have me be working at my best, then that's probably, these are the things that are going to trigger stress or trigger like you to not be working within your full capacity within that strength. That's kind of how I'm making sense of it. Does that help?
Yeah, that was great. So like basically the thing that triggers you to going from thriving in your strength to being stressed in an environment because you're not able to actualize your strength in the way you would really like to, that makes you feel, accomplished, productive, like you're living your best life.
Right.
It's the trigger that exists that makes that not possible or not as definitely more complicated.
Right. Yeah, that's how I'm thinking about it, is like the thing that doesn't allow you to be working within the talent part of that. Yeah.
Could it also be things that might bother you more if you have this talent and wouldn't necessarily bother someone who doesn't have this talent?
That's true. Yeah, absolutely. I would say that is true as well. Yeah. Because that same thing could exist, but it's not gonna like interact with a different person if they didn't necessarily have that talent. Yeah. Yeah. And this was in the document. I sent it out with like maybe over the summer to everyone in an email. But this was like, I think right at the beginning of when COVID hit, I sent out this document that was like things that stress you and things that how you relieve those stresses based on your talents. But it's also in our UHD folder under resources and handouts. If you're wanting to like look at the full list. So I'm pulling from that document and 3 or 4 others as I prepared the presentation for us. Good stuff. All right, so next up is developer. So here's some of our staff members who have developer, and then I pulled up our quick reference guide just in case that's helpful. So it reads, people exceptionally talented, and the developer theme, recognize and cultivate the potential in others. They spot the signs of each small improvement and derive satisfaction from evidence of progress. So to me, this is that person that is the cheerleader walking alongside the person. They see potential, they see development, they're wanting that growth in others, right? So some of the things that could lead to, and maybe it would be helpful, Jasco, for if you had our definition of weakness, might have been helpful as well. So I just want to go back to this real quick. So quick pause. I was like, ooh, actually, here we go. So weakness, a shortage or misapplication of talent, skill, or knowledge that causes problems for you or others. So that might help us understand as we're talking through. So developer, some of the basement, and so is to not an individual contributor, waste times on low potential people or spectator. Okay, so when we say in particular, the waste times on low potential people, oftentimes a developer, because they want to develop someone and what they see in someone, the thing that could go wrong is when someone doesn't want to be developed and they keep pushing them and saying, but I see this, and then they don't know how to disconnect or, because they don't want to give up on the person. And so that can really be a place that is tough for the person and for the individual who has that talent. And the places of the balcony for this is that they grow talent in others. They're often the teacher and the coach, and they enjoy helping others succeed and investing in others. And so, that's the ends of the spectrum there. And so there's that. Some of the downfalls is what I just kind of shared. Others may not want to be developed, or others may perceive that they're wasting time on only a select few people. And because they probably are, they're selecting the people who they see the potential is, and then they're investing. And so a weakness, as we talked about, can also be how you're perceived by others is, hey, you're only developing those people. So now I potentially can see that as a negative. Some genius things that they have is that they spot signs of each small improvement. So oftentimes people are making progress, but they can't themselves see it. So they help the other person see, hey, this is the small progression. And then they're able to help them celebrate and help other people be able to have that sense of satisfaction that that movement is happening. Some shadow sides to this is that they may be seen as too generous. They give of themselves too much. They might, just be discouraged when that potential is not realized and developed and the person doesn't, actualize all that they can see. Like that can really have an impact on this person. They lead with the desire to develop people, or depending on their other talents, they may lead with the desire to develop tasks or lead with the desire to develop structures. It's about development. Your other 4 talents are going to kind of dictate in what setting or space or how with the individual or with the idea or with the project, how it's being developed. They work to develop team members, and then they allow team members to plan for their tasks and how they want to celebrate the improvements along the way. Some things that might trigger or stress them out is if they're assessing without coaching. So they themselves might want and need some of that coaching along the way, or not. It would stress them out if they're not able to provide that for others. If giving up on people is going to be really hard for them, or if they see wasted potential. Those are the things that are going to really cause some friction in them. To relieve that is to coach towards growth, give second chances, and then being able to see potential realized are some things that are going to help fill them up, fill their bucket as you were, or provide some relief from those stressors. So thoughts about that, or examples of who you might have seen or experienced with developer?
Is anyone having issues seeing the screen?
Uh-oh, no?
I'm gonna leave and come back.
Oh, okay. See you in a little bit, Court.
I can speak to probably the person I work closest with in this department is Angela. And if any of you all have had the opportunity to work with her, she is really big. I think sometimes developers shows up as kind of Dr. Severs, with people, but also in intricate processes to help people be the best versions of themselves. Something I really I thought about the other day that Angela did with our desk assistant staff was creating our schedule, and then on a separate tab was creating a space for our student staff to have a way to okay, now that I have schedule, I can click a separate tab and now have access to people's contact information, which doesn't seem that's the developer, but that's her way of building in potential into people, hey, look at these resources that you have in front of you and how are you tapping into them, because she just taken such small intricate steps. I think developers also about giving people tools and means to be productive. So I think about that a lot. That's something she just really, really excels with.
Thank you for sharing. Other folk?
For this one, would it also include coming up with different, I guess, what's the word? Systems and strategies to do things in addition to what's listed on the screen? Coming up with different ways to do things?
So certainly what we're sharing on the screen is a small snippet. So developer might be a much broader thing. So coming up with strategies, if that's going to help develop the person, then yeah. So think about, these talents are the reoccurring thoughts, feelings, behaviors. So they're motivated by developing others. Or developing, I should stop it there because it might not be people, but tasks or projects, right? They're motivated by developing and recognizing the small improvements in a particular thing. So whatever it takes to do that, they're probably going to be willing and wanting to do that. Yeah. And you can read the full descriptions of it, because really each of these talent themes is a cluster of multiple talents. And so there's going to be things in them that you identify with and say that's totally me, or that's totally that person, and other things that may not be. And so it's providing language for you to understand these things that we think do or respond to or feel about, but it's not this is the only way. And so even when we share these weaknesses, you may never experience these things. It's just general, these are some of the things collected that have often been shared by people with these talents. And so it's not a prescriptive, like this is gonna happen, this is how you're gonna be perceived. So it's just provide examples of what could be. Hopefully that's helpful. Okay, so on to empathy. So here's some of our staff members with empathy, and I'm going to read the quick reference description for that. So people exceptionally talented in the empathy theme can sense other people's feelings by imagining themselves in others' lives or situations. Okay, so here's some things. The basement of empathy is that they're perceived as soft, moody, or overly involved. Okay, and so as we think about, especially in our society, what's considered soft skills are often things around emotional intelligence and things that can't necessarily be quantified. So it's a lot around emotions, a lot around feeling, a lot around what vocabulary we have to express what we're feeling. And so the balcony for empathy is creating trust. What they do at their best is create trust. They bring healing. They somehow have this talent and knack for knowing just what to say or what to do. And they're able to customize their approach for others because of these talents that they have. Some downfalls is that they may be overwhelmed by the emotions of others. Oftentimes when I coach in this area, I talk about how if they're thinking about what careers to do or what types, how to spend most of their day, to find some space, even though they might be drawn and called to like helping others and, being kind of a consultant and coach in that way, hearing people's concerns. If they do that all day long without a break and without a way to disconnect and not a way to like switch the way that they're functioning, that could potentially be a burnout. The very thing that they do so well and that people reach out to them about can eventually be so taxing that then they're like depleted because of all of those emotions that they're in tune to. The over-involved piece is because they can relate so viscerally with other people and walk alongside people, or sometimes people will talk about, a friend will call and say, this is what happened to me, tell me how I feel. Because they're able to like pick up on it and then verbalize it even before that person has the chance to like process or even like be in tune and know how they're feeling. Somehow they're able to like put themselves in that person. So then because of that, if someone's not understanding that just happens, I'm not trying to do it, that might be a perception of, oh, you're overly involved in that person's like situation or whatever. So that could be a potential downside. They form close, meaningful relationships. They imagine themselves in other people's lives or situations. They can put themselves there. Some stressors is emotionally detached people. If someone's just completely not aware, if they're around that a lot, then that's going to be hard for them because they're wanting to engage in like feelings and what are people going through. Self-centeredness in others is going to like really not resonate well, or unduly taking on other people's feelings. If someone's putting their feelings on them and saying like, you have to do that, then that's probably not going to go over well. So how they can get relief from that is appreciating the value of detachment following their convictions and maintaining personal sovereignty of like, what is my space? And let's see, they lead with understanding of emotions and people. They help read the climate of a team. And then they are also an encourager of others. All right, so I'm going to pause there. And let's hear, oops, I meant to pause, not stop share. Oh, well, I'll deal with that. But yeah, let's hear your thoughts or experiences with this theme.
I have a question.
Yes.
I also have this strength, and I feel like by asking this question, it also shows that I have this strength. But what do you mean by unduly taking on others? What does that look like?
Mm-hmm. I can attempt to tell you how I understand it, but I'm wondering and curious if anyone else in the room wants to take a stab at it. What does that mean? How do you all read that when you interpret that when you read that?
Could it mean that you, like what you discussed, as if you picked a career where you were in a position to take on other people's emotions all day, all the time, does that maybe what that means, that that you're in situations too much of that where you need to be where you are taking on other people's feelings? Or does it mean taking them on when you shouldn't take them on?
And maybe it's all of it.
Yeah, as someone, I used to have empathy as a top strength for a very long time, and it's no longer in my top 10 anymore. But I think as I've had to like process it, I think it's a lot of like, I don't like to use the word unduly with like not having barriers, but having barriers broken. And I think it's like this surge. I think like empaths naturally, like there's a book, it's called The Empath Experience, 10 out of 10 would recommend. And it talks about like the 10 different types of empaths in the world. And there's people that like empathic towards nature. There are people that are empathic towards like people's feelings, things like that. Like I think empathy is so often like mood centered, but it's also just like so sensory. So I know for like myself, unduly undertakings would be like I'm like overstimulated with like all this like motion around me. I would like call like emotional seasickness is I guess the way to put it, because other people's like emotional turbulence where you're like, okay, like let's focus on one thing, but like you're having me ride this roller coaster with you, largely because I think people often like expect you just because you're naturally good at it, just to be like, well, like ride this roller coaster with me when you're like, I don't want on this ride right now.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that understanding as well. But yes, Jennifer, that's how I was reading it, is like just when you go to doing it a lot. Yeah. Thank you for that question too. And just because you have questions and that you're still unpacking and understanding a theme that you like, that you have, doesn't mean like there's no judgment there either. Like that's what the space is for, where I'm constantly learning more about, oh, that action or that thought is related to this theme, or like, so like you don't have to be the expert just because you have that particular talent. Does that make sense?
And I think that the idea of this talent is where, or like this strength and talent, where is what probed the question, because in my brain, when I'm thinking about me utilizing my strength of empathy, I don't imagine a situation where someone is able to force me to be in a situation where I am like, yes, let's talk about your feelings. I feel what you feel. I understand. Like, I don't imagine a situation where someone is forcing me to do that. Do I put myself in that situation? Yes. But that doesn't mean that they necessarily force me. So I was like, what does that mean if someone is like just always unpacking on you, I guess? But the ways that you all kind of describe different situations of what this could look like, in terms of like, sometimes you're right, I don't want to do that, but here we are in a situation where I am still doing it. Or If you're just doing a lot of it all the time, I think that both of those make a little bit more sense to me.
Yeah. And I also have heard an example of like some people, they'll get a phone call and they can like sense that it's going to take a lot from them if they answer that phone call. But then they might still answer it and not answer it. And so like that might be a struggle and a push pull with this talent, to like when to, recognize when they don't need to do it in that moment. That doesn't mean that they won't ever do it and, won't call that person back when they're ready to do it, and those sort of things. So, but I think Jasko, were you going to say something?
I was going to ask, so correct me if, interrupt this if it's wrong. One of the other things I understand the weaknesses to be is maybe not necessarily what the person with the strength sees them, but how they are seen by others.
Right.
And so the unduly taking on, other feelings might not necessarily be always what someone who's empathetic sees in themselves, but how another person might judge what they're doing. Like, oh my goodness, that person always taking on, they're upset all the time because they're always taking on everyone else's upsetness, if you will. And so I sometimes hear the weakness not just not just as internal, like how you might see it, but also how others might quickly or inappropriately or without fully understanding judge your strength. I don't know if that is helpful, Courtney. That's just one way.
That's right on, Jasko. That's right on that, like how others might not know or not understand the gift aspect of it. So then they judge it from their own lens, in this way, not knowing or recognizing that the benefits of that being something brought to the team. That, I think that's right on. Thank you for that. Yeah. What do you think, Courtney?
I absolutely love that and agree. I think that particularly with my strengths, I think they kind of feed off of one another. So having empathy mixed with my wound communication, I think that there's definitely times where I probably am doing I may be utilizing empathy too much, but I also think that there are times where it may seem draining to someone else, but it's not necessarily draining to me, and then putting that judgment.
Right. Because it might be something that if they were doing it, that would be a whole lot, and it would take a lot more effort. Whereas for you, it might come natural, or it might even be filling you up. And so not recognizing that. Yeah, absolutely. And another way, as we think about weaknesses, sometimes the other way that we can manage weakness is by bringing in another one of our talents, and then bringing in our use of that more to kind of, manage or deal with the situation differently than how you might be currently doing it. So that's another thought to continue to bring in. If you can recognize the signs or the triggers the signs or like the symptoms of, oh, this is when I start to do this thing, then maybe you can like execute plan management of that talent before it goes to that place. If you have that awareness, then you can help kind of manage yourself to bring out the best in you, for the team and for yourself, right? And for your family and all your loved ones. All right, so next up is harmony. So here's who has that. I'm going to read from the quick reference. So harmony. People exceptionally talented in the harmony theme look for consensus. They don't enjoy conflict. Rather, they seek areas of agreement. All right, so let's dive in here. Wait. There we go. All right, so balcony for harmony. They are a negotiator. So how I think about harmony is that they can see all sides of a situation. They're great at asking questions. They have the ability to arrive at consensus, and they are a great facilitator. However, on the flip side of that, they can be seen as weak, indecisive, non-confrontational, and avoiding conflict. what I've been learning most recently, I've really been digging into this harmony on my understanding of this. And it's really come down to like, I can pick up on when there's friction or dissonance. And sometimes I feel it almost as though I have empathy, and empathy is number 30 for me. So it's like, what? And so I can feel when there is dissonance and like friction between sides. And then I help those that are in that space figure out where they can agree, where there's forms of agreement as a base and a foundation, and then from there begin to unpack the other layers associated. So yes, can I be seen as indecisive because I'm like trying to understand each side? So like unpacking that, and then it's like, oh, I can see this, I can see this. Then that might be seen as like, well, then you're like, you just gotta decide, stop taking everyone else's side. Right? But if you're the facilitator, you're like facilitating that conversation. Or, hey, you might be seen as non-confrontational because you're trying to keep the peace within the team. And so those are some of those things. It may be seen or felt that you dislike conflict. Again, weak comes up or indecisive comes up. And some things you are able to, with this particular talent, bring people together to seek consensus. So harmony is a lot of times very collaborative and interdisciplinary. And so they're wanting to bring multiple groups and multiple perspectives together in one place, with a shared kind of, even if it's overlapping, not all one shared, but like something shared from each of the groups so that we can do one particular thing. Some shadow sides, either they do avoid conflict at all costs, or that people perceive that they avoid conflict at all costs. Stressful and anxious with confrontation, that definitely, I know that's like a feeling when because I feel it, the potential weakness of it or shadow side of it is that then I want to run away from the confrontation, even though I might be the very thing that can help the confrontation, if that makes any sense. And so it's like, I can do well and assist in the confrontation, but I'm gonna have a reaction to it. That kind of, I'm like the bell, the alarm that goes off of like, there's potential conflict, then I'm probably gonna be able to like let you know about that. So leading within that. So they lead with the ability to find agreement. They help team members to understand varying perspectives. They're gonna have a lot of respect for multiple perspectives, and they're gonna tend to stand up to bullies. So the stress triggers I kind of have talked about: relational tension, those that disregard others, or people who are bullying others. Those are going to be like causes for tension. So I've talked a little bit about this and shared some of like my examples. What examples do you all have or maybe have observed in others?
Well, this is one of my top 5.
Woo! Okay, let's hear about it.
And the main theme in here is conflict, and I hate conflict. I dislike it to a fault.
Amen. Yeah.
But at the same time, I want to seek resolution
Right.
to it. So some of my other themes and positivity is my number 1, but the stress triggers, it's when I see people bullying one another. I think this past it's my lunch call coming.
No worries.
But this past presidential election, I was full of stress triggers. It just looks like the bullying that was going on, and I don't want to get into that, but it just triggered all of my, I had a lot of tension at that time, but I cannot stand people who disregard others. You know, everything that's been in the news lately is, you know, just drives me to want to solve it.
Mhm.
What can I do to solve it? How can I do it? But at the same time, I make it a point to, if I see it, you know, do something
Mhm.
versus just being indecisive. So, but anyway, that I just wanted to add that this is my number 5 strength. Is number 5. It's I do seek a collaborative ending to things, but I do come across, like, I may come across weak and indecisive.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for sharing. Other thoughts around this one or experiences? Okay. I'm gonna go on to the next one. Let's see. Okay, so next up is includer. All right, includer from the quick reference guide. People exceptionally talented in the includer theme accept others. They show awareness of those who feel left out and make an effort to include them. All right, so here's some of the things. So an includer person is going to invite people in, be caring, encourage others, be sensitive to others, and then take up the banner for others. How that may be perceived by others is others may perceive that they are indiscriminate, unable to decide, and that they're generous to a fault. Some downfalls: unable to decide because they want everyone, or they want everyone to be involved. So then it's going to probably take some time. They get hurt when rejected by those who want to include. That sounds familiar from which other one? Developer got, when that rejection piece happened, then then it also caused a conflict. So when the very thing that you're like feel called to do is include someone, and someone like rejects that and doesn't want to be included, then that's gonna like cause some friction for you of like, wait, but like I'm wanting to include you. So that's gonna cause some concern. The genius that comes from this is that they have an awareness of those who feel left out, and they make the effort to include them. Unification is like really one of the best things that this talent and this theme brings to a team, is people feeling unified, feeling togetherness, feeling a sense of belonging from this person. Some shadow sides: not respecting the wishes of others. So again, back to like how Courtney's question is this within the individual or perceived by other people of, hey, is it, someone seeing from the outside, hey, I want to include you. And then from the outside, it's like, well, obviously they didn't want to be included because they were doing these things. So then now you're not respecting their wishes of not wanting to be included. And I can see that like tossle back and forth of that being a shadow side based on action, and a shadow side potentially based on how it might be perceived. Or disinterested in joining a group. Like if someone is disinterested, that's going to potentially, cause a problem for the person who wants to include them. And then never satisfied in terms of like you want to include one more perspective, one more person, so then someone else might be like, well, geez, you're like not satisfied. Oh, is someone having to go to a meeting? Is that we're like waving? Leading. So they lead with the ability to respect and honor each person, help the team members who may feel like they're on the fringe, feel like they're part of the whole. Those are really the like big things that that this person's able to, or persons with this talent are able to bring to the table. And so some of those things that stress them are people who are left out. Intolerance is certainly going to be a stressor for them. And then that feeling of leaving others behind is not going to feel too good. So some relief from that is accepting people, like bringing people in and give people at least being given a choice to come along, an invitation. That's gonna like feel much better for the person with includer. So I'm going to pause there and see how you all have been experiencing or observing this talent. Feel like we got a good sense of this one then. Okay. All right, moving on. I don't know why it takes a minute before it like brings the little thingy down so that I can resume. Okay, here's individualization. All right, let me read. People exceptionally talented in the individualization theme are intrigued with the unique qualities of each person. They have a gift for figuring out how different people can work together productively. All right. So what does this look like? All right, so the balcony of individualization is that they see the uniqueness in all individuals, and they intuitively know that one size does not fit all, and they appreciate differences in others. So if I think about this in terms of Don Clifton, who created the Clifton Strengths, had individualization in his top 5. And that allows for for each person to uniquely be able to communicate what they bring to the table, and to find another person with the same top 5 in the same order is 1 in 33 million. That to me is a good example of individualization at its best, to be able to have each individual person be able to have language that helps them see how they are uniquely special, and customize a system and a tool and an assessment that allows them to see themselves in it. That's like, at its core, individualization. So how others might see them, unable to synthesize when it comes to people. And we'll get into that in a little bit. And that has difficulty placing group above individual, and difficulty in making people decisions. So because they might be leaning towards wanting to customize based on individual experience, then it's going to be hard for them to make like a specific solid, this is the only way to do it when it comes to people, because they're always going to be wanting to, or at least that's the perception, is that they're always wanting to be customizing, and that they're not going to be able to go for what group think versus individual think. They're going to be coming up with other examples of how it doesn't work for this specific person in this specific way. So that potentially is going to get in conflict with someone who's trying to like create systems and rules and orders that are like overarching. That's going to come into conflict. Geniuses is they form powerful relationships with others with this one. They build trust. They want to know about the unique qualities of others. And they have a gift for identifying how people are different. They have a gift for identifying how people can work together productively. They might have a hard time, like it said above, putting the group above others. They have difficulty maybe making decision because it goes against one particular person or situation. They may be seen as intrusive because they're like trying to think about that particular person's perception. They may be overwhelmed by information. They may be seen as judgmental or manipulative. They're going to be triggered by a one-size-fits-all approach or pressure to do things completely equally because they're going to see how it's not equitable to certain people, or when they're not given the personal details so that they can customize. That's going to also, not feel as good. So relief from that is customized approach, the ability to treat some people differently or have that like option to customize, and then to have those personal details so that they can use those to inform how they're going to operate moving forward. Okay, so I'll pause there. Thoughts, questions, experiences about individualization? No? Oh. Are you all with me at least? Okay.
Yeah, this is one that I personally wish that I had more of. If you will. I've worked with a few people in the past who probably had this as one of their superpowers, and it's made a big difference. Made a big difference for me personally as they've helped my career, but also just in general, like this talent is one that I would like to try to, I don't know, build up, because I know we can make use of things that are not in our top whatever. We just have to work a little harder at it.
Yeah. So, and I would say, thank you for for speaking, but also thinking about maybe partner with people with individualization, or reach out to them and ask them how they're experiencing it, or what are they doing, and those sort of things, rather than trying to just like do it yourself. And if there's certain things that they're doing, what is it? I would unpack a little bit more. What is it about what they do that is attractive to you? And how can you use what's in your top 5 or maybe even like 2 of your themes together to like do that thing without necessarily trying to do it in the way that they do it, if that makes sense. So it's like get to the same outcome, but use what's in you to get there. And you can maybe do that by like, sitting down with them and like, kind of doing an informational interview of like, okay, so like, how are you wired? What motivates you? What makes you tick? How are you doing that? Maybe how can we team up, or, those sort of things. And then being able to like, do it for yourself, but in your own way, using your talents, if that makes sense. Good stuff. Thank you. All right, I think we have about 2 more, and then we'll wrap up. So the next one is positivity. All right, positivity. Let me look for that one. Here we go. So again, this is on the quick reference guide. I have to. Wow. Okay, here we go. People exceptionally talented and the positivity theme have contagious enthusiasm, and they are upbeat, and they can get others excited about what they are going to do. So here's some of the folks on our team with positivity. And all right, here's some of the things. They may be seen as insincere, naive, superficial, too optimistic, as though they're a Pollyanna, and that they're in denial of reality. These are some things that people are thinking about this positivity talent. Some of the balconies and some of the ways that they're leading, they lead with enthusiasm. They are energetic. They're generous with praise. They are optimistic. They are lighthearted. They maintain hopeful. They have a hopeful spirit. They release pressure from themselves to be like, it's going to be okay. And like kind of they give grace. We'll say it that way. Like, right. Like, so it's going to be okay kind of mantra, that release of that pressure from self. They have the freedom to not fabricate the upside. That's like some relief, to feel like they don't have to, fabricate it. But that doesn't mean that. So oftentimes I think the misperception with positivity is that they are unaware of reality, right? This like shadow side, this denial of reality. This is how people might be perceiving this. But I don't think that's true for positivity. I think it's an awareness of reality and a choosing to see the upside and to believe in the upside and to have hope that the upside can occur. And I kind of see positivity as the energy in a room, the vibe and the attitude in a space. They can pick up on it quickly. And like, that's another place where I think feeling comes in, where a positivity person, their vibe and their attitude is mirrored by those in the space. So if they walk into a space and they're feeling uplifted and they have a smile and they have that energy, other people are going to feed off of that energy. Whereas maybe someone else is up or down or whatever, they're not going to necessarily feed off of that. They're just going to notice it and go, oh, they're blah, blah, blah. But there's some people that have this like connection and magnetism in them that when they walk into a room, if they're kind of slightly feeling down, somehow people are going to pick up on that too, and they're going to feel that. I think that comes with positivity, in that sometimes people will, and at least as I've experienced it, when I'm feeling down, people pick up on it and then they ask me about it. And then sometimes I'll get mad because I'm like, well, every time you were feeling down, I lifted you up. When I'm feeling down, you're questioning me. And so now I'm feeling like I did something wrong. And then I spiral. And what I've learned to do is, not everyone has this talent. So not everyone can provide this for everyone else. So when I'm feeling down, I reach out to other people with positivity, because they're going to be able to do for me maybe what I'm not able to do for myself in that moment, which is to see the positive, to have the hope, to recognize that it's going to be okay. In that moment, I like faltered for a minute and I went in, or it was like too much for me to continue to have those messages. So I'm seeking those messages. And so when I walk into a space and I'm not providing that for other people, they can sense it. And then they are going to request it and ask for it and, like pull it out. So I think that has just been my experience with positivity, that people don't understand that it's less of like something that you can like specifically point to. It's more of an energy. So I do you want to like contribute something, Courtney, to that? I kind of see your.
Yeah, I also have positivity. It's in my top 5. I think that this is I guess in all of your strengths, people can kind of see that piece in you, but I think this is one that people can identify, even if they don't identify it as positivity, mostly because it's like a pretty important piece of my job. I definitely relate to a lot of the different weaknesses that are outlined here in terms of like even the insincerity, which I don't deal with as much now. And I think that's because I'm around a lot of people who really understand my personality and recognize that if I'm coming at you with a lot of energy and excitement, that it is genuine. But that is something that I've dealt with in the past. And it's something I'm very mindful of, particularly when we're going into trainings and things. I still want to bring the excitement, but I also read the room of like, sometimes if it's too much, then I can bring it back a little bit. Still enough where it's like enough for people, but I can recognize a little bit more easily if it's a little too much. And so bringing that down a little bit so that people don't think it's insincere and they know that I really am trying to just bring a positive energy into the room. I also think you brought up a good point, which is kind of tough because one of the stress triggers is the pressure to always be positive. But within positivity, if your vibe sometimes determines the room's vibe, then there's always the pressure to be positive because every time you walk into a room, that's what people are expecting. And so I think that that's like a not fun. That was not the right word, but that's like a weird catch-22 of like having this trait or not trait, this strength. And so I think that that's something interesting and just to be aware of. And kind of like you said, in those moments, I think that a lot of times for a lot of people with positivity, or I should just speak for myself, for me as someone with positivity, I think that a lot of times the pressure to be positive doesn't bother me because that is like naturally how I am. But in the moments when I'm not, kind of like you said, finding a way to bring up my mood or communicate with the others around me. So like in our case, like in a job, if I'm talking with Jennifer and I'm like, today I'm really feeling bad, then maybe it's not the day for me to leave the training, because that then affects how everyone else feels in that specific moment. Or if I can't turn it on, or if I can turn it on, what does that look like? And being able to communicate those kinds of things to the people around you, I think is really important.
Yes, that's so perfect because I think for me, what I've learned is then maybe that is a clue or a cue to me of like, maybe I need to take time off, or maybe I need to not, go in, or maybe I need to just recognize where that question might be coming from and why they might be asking it. And then that way I can say to them, I haven't eaten yet, or like, I'm tired. Because if I can acknowledge that they're right, and then in that they're seeing a change in my mood, but then I can like promise, not like promise, but like reassure them that it's not something drastically wrong, but rather it's, something that is temporary. Then they're okay, and they can be okay. And I don't have to pretend to be positive when I'm not. But I think the awareness of like, okay, yeah, see you. The awareness of like, oh, hey, I at least recognize that it's positivity that they're noticing, so that I that I can like adjust accordingly, right? So sorry. We're at time. And so I'm going to quickly review Relator just because it's our last one and I don't want to miss that one. So I understand if you have to go, but here we go. Relator. Okay, Relator. People exceptionally talented in the Relator theme enjoy close relationships with others. They find deep satisfaction in working hard with friends to achieve a goal. And so here's our folks with it. It looks like I didn't finish, sorry. And then Relator. So they are caring, they are trusting, they're a great friend, they're forgiving, they're generous. I will say this as well, they're private people, and it's going to take a lot before they share out with others. They're probably going to have circles of friends, or sections or segments of friends where they want to share deeply, and so they're going to choose who those people are that they're going to share with. And so then the shadow side or the weakness of that is that then people are going to misunderstand what that's about. And then they're going to think that they're in a clique, or they have a closed circle, or that they're playing favorites, as we see in the downfalls, because they have these groups of people that they're going to invest in over long periods of time before that they truly share about themselves and things about themselves. That's how that might be perceived. They're going to foster those interpersonal relationships and want close, deep, intimate in terms of like the topics of choice. They really want to like unpack and dig into like who you are and what you're about and what you want. And so sometimes with Relator, they know how to like bring that deep conversation and thing out of in people, and they can like get people to like feel comfortable and talk. And then sometimes people will feel really comfortable with that person and then realize that they don't really know much about the person who's like doing all of the great like unpacking, because they're really, you know, close with who they might share those things with, or strategic about, I'm going to share this story with you, but you're at this level, so I'm going to share this part of the story, and maybe not like the full thing. So that might change based off of who you are and what circle you're in. So, and they like and want to work hard with friends who are in those close circles to achieve goals. They lead by fostering deep relationships. And so then for our team, they're going to create those meaningful relationships with other team members. So then the stress trigger is not finding common affinity. If they're not able to find that, then that's going to cause dissonance. Or if they perceive people to be shallow, then they're not going to be able to go deep with them. Or if they're meeting people for the first time, then they might be more, I'm going to observe first, or I'm going to sit back and in a you know, party setting, or they might not want to attend something where they have to meet new people, because it's like, you know, I'm wanting the relationships and investing in the people that I already have. So usually if it's a new setting, it's best if they're going with a buddy and then meeting and introduced by another person. That's going to feel like more of a circle than it is like meeting everyone and anyone. So I'll pause there. Thoughts or observations or reactions to that?
I'll have one super quick and then I have to run.
Yep.
I love the Relator strength. I think that it's so cool. I admire it quite a lot. And I definitely have felt some insecurity around it. Like I wish that I had it more, because I was often doing comparison between woo and Relator, and I'm like, I want deep relationships too, I promise. So I think that
you do, and you will have those. Yeah.
And I've just learned that I think that as I learn more about the Relator, although I do value deep relationships, I think that it does not necessarily fall into my personality. I think that, again, like even just some of the stress triggers are things that would not be triggers for me at all. And so just learning how I can use my other strengths to also bring up my Relator kind of.
Yeah, and I think it's less of like bringing up the talent of Relator and more so like, this is an activity in terms what I'm hearing from you, and maybe like, you know, let me know if this is not correct, but you're valuing the relationship building part of the going deep.
Yeah.
And so that doesn't mean that you can't go deep without necessarily doing, you know, all the things of a Relator. So it's less about the strengths envy of I want to be more Relator, and more of like this specific like action, or, you know, action is something that I'm wanting to invest more in. And so then with that target, you're thinking about, okay, which of my 2 or 3 talents am I going to use to like get more there? So I think I know it's like a nuanced shift, but a shift between like they have that and I don't, and I want it, versus like there's an aspect of what they do that I appreciate and I see the value and benefit in it. And so I want that too. And I'm going to use what I have to get me there.
Absolutely.
Just a slight shift in doing that, but cool. Anyone else before we close up for today? Thank you so much for coming. I appreciate you all's willingness to learn and dig deep about these things. And thank you, Jasco. Thank you, Kurt. Thank you, John. Thank you, Courtney. Appreciate you much. Have a wonderful day.
Bye, y'all.
Bye.